I remember the exact second my world cracked open. It was 8:17 a.m. on a crisp October morning in Chicago. The kind where the wind off Lake Michigan cuts through your coat like a warning. I was Sophia Lang, Senior Finance Manager at Harrington and Vale Investments, one of the most respected firms on the Magnificent Mile. 10 years I had given them, 10 years of 5 a.m. alarms, skipped family dinners, weekends buried in spreadsheets, and crises I solved before anyone else even noticed the smoke. I built risk models from scratch, mentored dozens of young analysts, and kept the books so clean you could eat off them. That morning I stepped into the glass-walled conference room on the 22nd floor expecting another routine quarterly sync. Mr. Harlan Reed, the new CFO hired from a flashy West Coast fintech startup just 4 months earlier, sat alone at the head of the long walnut table. His suit was impeccable, his expression carved from ice. "Sophia," he said, not bothering with pleasantries or eye contact beyond a brief flick. "We're accelerating our shift to full AI-driven analytics and automated reconciliation. Your approach, manual ledgers, detailed audits. That old-school precision, it's too slow for where we're headed." I opened my mouth to respond, to explain how my methods had caught errors that algorithms missed, how the board had praised my accuracy in last year's review. But he cut me off before a word escaped. "You're being let go. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out once you've cleared your desk." The silence that followed pressed against my eardrums. My pulse hammered in my throat. I searched his face for any flicker of hesitation, any sign this was a cruel joke or a miscommunication. Nothing. Just flat finality. As if I were a line item being deleted from a spreadsheet. 10 years reduced to a single sentence. No severance discussion. No transition plan. No acknowledgement of the all-nighters or the holidays I'd sacrificed. I stood slowly, leg steady only because pride demanded it. "Understood," I managed, voice tighter than the knot in my stomach. I walked back to my office, my former office, feeling the weight of eyes on me from every cubicle. My nameplate was already gone. The polished brass rectangle that once read Sophia Lang, Senior Finance Manager, had been removed some time before I arrived, leaving a faint rectangular shadow on the wood. That detail hit harder than the words in the conference room. They had planned this. Planned it so thoroughly they erased my presence before I even knew I was leaving. Packing took less than 20 minutes. I moved methodically, folding certificates into a box, tucking away the small framed photo of me and my daughter Mia at her 8th grade graduation, collecting the stress relief squeeze toy one of my ments had given me years ago. Every motion felt detached, like watching someone else's hands. The view of the lake through the floor-to-ceiling windows looked the same, gray waves chopping under a slate sky, but the space no longer belonged to me. Security waited in the lobby. Mark, a guard I'd shared coffee with for years, looked apologetic as he walked me to the revolving doors. "Company policy," he murmured. I nodded once and stepped into the October wind. In my car, parked in the employee garage, I gripped the wheel until my knuckles whitened. Tears threatened, but I refused them. Not here. Not where cameras might catch the breakdown. That night the apartment felt too quiet. Mia, 15 going on 30, found me on the couch staring at nothing. She slid beside me without asking questions, her head resting on my shoulder. "You'll figure it out, Mom. You always do." Her faith in me was a lifeline and a burden at the same time. After she went to bed, I pulled out my old leather-bound ledger, the one I kept as a personal archive. Handwritten notes from years of spotting irregularities the digital systems glossed over. Flipping pages brought a strange comfort until page 187 stopped me cold. An expense transfer entry, $4.2 million moved from operational reserves to an unfamiliar vendor code. I had reviewed the final Q3 report myself. This line had not existed then. The ink differed slightly, the handwriting not quite matching my usual script. My skin prickled. I cross-checked against my personal tablet backup. The numbers had been altered after I signed off. Subtle shifts in liability projections. Mask reserve draws. This wasn't sloppy accounting. This was deliberate. The realization settled heavy in my chest. They hadn't fired me because I was slow or outdated. They needed me gone because I was getting close to something dangerous. I sat in the dark, heart racing, the city lights outside blurring. Whoever sent that anonymous text later that night, "You weren't meant to see this," only confirmed what my gut already screamed. The silence in my apartment turned menacing. I was no longer just unemployed. I was a threat they had tried to neutralize. The next days blurred into a haze of insomnia and frantic research. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak in the hallway outside our apartment made me freeze. Mia noticed my distraction but respected my silence, leaving me notes with little hearts reminding me to eat. I needed an ally, someone still inside Harrington and Vale who hadn't drunk the new regime's Kool-Aid. Jordan Hayes came to mind immediately. 6 years earlier, she had been my sharpest intern, hungry for knowledge, meticulous with numbers, and refreshingly unafraid to question authority. She had moved into operations and stayed clear of Reed's inner circle. I reached out through a new, anonymous messaging app and suggested a discreet coffee meet at a quiet cafe near the Art Institute. Jordan arrived looking exhausted, constantly glancing over her shoulder. "Sophia," she whispered after sliding into the booth. "Things have gone sideways since you left. Reed's team rolled out this new AI reconciliation platform. But the transaction logs don't reconcile with the legacy system you built. It's like they're layering noise over real movements." She leaned closer. I overheard a late call, Reed, and someone from a vendor I couldn't identify. They're routing payments through shell accounts, scrambling the audit trail just enough to slip past standard checks. Your old manual protocols aren't integrated with the new tools. If anyone's going to trace the real flow, it's you. Confirmation hit like ice water. This wasn't paranoia or wounded ego. Money was disappearing, millions funneled offshore under fake vendor names. Jordan's fear was palpable. "Be careful," I told her. "They might come for you next." She nodded, eyes wide, and slipped away into the crowd. Back home, I discovered my worst fear realized. My laptop had been remotely wiped, every Q3 file, comparative forecast, internal memo, even personal notes gone. Recovery attempts failed. Then a single line appeared on screen before I yanked the plug. "We warned you." Panic clawed at my throat. They had been inside my system, monitoring, waiting. I remembered the small wooden box in the back of my closet, buried under winter boots and old tax folders. Inside lay a dusty USB drive labeled in my handwriting, "Legacy backups. Trust no one." My fingers trembled as I plugged it in. The files were intact, raw ledger exports, system logs, untouched payment approvals from years past. A lifeline. By Monday, the news cycle turned ugly. Headlines screamed about unusual accounting activity at Harrington and Vale. Clients were withdrawing. Investors demanded answers. Reed's empire of glass and ambition was cracking. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. "Sophia," Reed's voice came through strained. "We're in serious trouble. The systems are failing. Numbers don't balance. I need your expertise on the old platform. No one else understands it the way you do. 10 years of loyalty erased in one meeting, and now this desperate plea." I let the silence stretch, savoring his discomfort. "You mean the outdated manual methods you mocked?" I finally replied. He didn't laugh. "Please. Full access. No interference. I agreed. But only on my terms. Walking back into the building days later felt surreal. Whispers trailed me like ghosts. My old office remained empty. No replacement had lasted. The legacy system welcomed me like an old friend. Passwords still worked. It didn't take long to unearth the buried transactions, dozens of payments to ghost vendors tracing to offshore shells. But then I saw it, my digital signature, forged across approval logs, authorization forms, payment schedules, multiple instances, all time-stamped after my firing. My breath caught. They hadn't just pushed me out. They had woven me into their crime. The missing nameplate, the sudden termination, the wiped files, it all clicked. Reed hadn't called for help. He had called to tighten the noose. I was meant to be the scapegoat. I copied everything to the hidden drive, pulse thundering. Working in the quiet of my apartment that night, I cross-referenced old receipts, handwritten marginal notes, vendor IDs from yellowed pages. Muscle memory took over. The pattern emerged clearly. Every major leak carried Reed's shadow. Then the hammer fell. Headlines blared, Harrington and Vale insider accused of fraud, former finance head Sophia Lang named. My photo from an old company event accompanied accusations that I had orchestrated the scheme using outdated manual protocols to hide years of embezzlement. The article painted me as the calculating villain. Reed's fingerprints were everywhere, twisting my legacy into evidence against me. That evening, plainclothes detectives knocked. Sophia Lang? You're under arrest for corporate fraud and embezzlement. Mia's cry pierced the air as they cuffed me. I met her eyes. Stay strong, baby. This isn't over. In the interrogation room, the air felt thick with accusation. They presented forged signatures, wire transfers, timelines. I listened silently until my lawyer arrived. Then I reached into my bag and handed over the drive. There's an audio file on here you should hear. The recording played, Reed's voice unmistakable in what sounded like a private strategy session. She's just a sentimental number cruncher. By the time she realizes, every trail points straight to her. Chaos erupted. My lawyer whispered, "This changes everything." The days in holding were a blur of fluorescent lights and echoing footsteps. I replayed every choice, every late night, every moment of loyalty now weaponized against me. But the evidence from the legacy drive and the recording unraveled their case. FBI agents took over. Within 48 hours, the narrative flipped. News broke. FBI arrests CFO in $38 million corporate fraud. Whistleblower Sophia Lang exonerated. Reed was let out in cuffs. The same man who fired me now facing cameras and charges. I walked free into a swarm of reporters. Microphones thrust forward. I said little, letting the truth speak for itself. I didn't return to the firm. The title, the office, even an apology held no appeal. Instead, I channeled everything into purpose. Using my savings, I launched Legacy Finance Women, a nonprofit teaching financial literacy to women, single mothers, retirees, young professionals, arming them with tools to spot fraud, read balance sheets, trust their instincts. We started small above a laundromat with folding chairs and enthusiasm. Word spread. Enrollment surged. One afternoon, I received a plain envelope with no return address. Inside, a card in Reed's arrogant script, "You are always ahead," and a check for $450,000 from a familiar offshore account. Blood money, or last taunt. I never cashed it. It stayed in the drawer as proof of survival. Months later, I stood before teen girls in a community center, whiteboard filled with simple ledgers. Their bright eyes mirrored my younger self. I taught them integrity outlasts algorithms. That old-school diligence can topple empires. One evening, a woman in her 50s approached after a panel I spoke on. She had worked under Reed years earlier and nearly been destroyed. "You saved more than you know," she said,
tears falling.
That moment crystallized everything. The story wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming dignity, proving that staying true to yourself, manual ledgers and all, can still win. Have you ever faced betrayal that forced you to choose between crumbling or fighting with quiet fire? The answer lies in what you build next.